They say some moments haunt you forever. And I used to think that was just something people said to sound poetic, dramatic even. But I know now it's true. Because it's been 3 years since that party, 3 long, heavy years, and still, there are nights when I wake up, breathless. Like I've been holding my breath in a dream I can't wake up from. Replaying every second of that night. Every look. Every laugh. Every silence. Sometimes I wonder if I had left the party 10 minutes earlier, or maybe stayed by his side a little longer, would any of this have happened? Or was it always going to fall apart, no matter what I did? I remember it all too well. The dress I wore, red, silky, a little risky for someone who'd been married for over a decade. I wore it because he once said red was my color. I thought, maybe if he saw me in it again, he'd remember how we used to be. I thought maybe that night would bring us closer. But I had no idea how wrong I was. He said he was going to get drinks. Just a simple thing. Something a husband would do without a second thought. But what he actually did destroyed everything I thought I knew. I wish I could tell you that I found out gently. That there was some warning. Some sign. But sometimes life doesn't give you flashing lights. Sometimes it gives you whispers. Subtle little cracks in the glass that you ignore until the whole thing shatters right in your hands. And the thing is, it wasn't just what he did that night. It was the way he looked at me afterward, like I was the one intruding. Like I was the one who didn't belong. Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt completely invisible? Like you could scream at the top of your lungs and no one would hear you? That's how I felt at that party. Even before it all went down. There was laughter, music, fancy little appetizers passed around on silver trays. People dressed in clothes that cost more than a month's rent, fake smiles stretched across two tight faces. And me. Standing there with a glass of wine I wasn't even drinking, watching him, laughing with her. The way his eyes crinkled. The way her hand touched his arm, too casually to be innocent. The way he leaned in just a little too close. And still, I told myself I was imagining it. Because when you've been with someone that long, you learn to talk yourself out of the truth. You tell yourself you're just tired. That you're being sensitive. That he wouldn't do that to you. Not after all you've been through together. Not after the kids. The sacrifices. The late nights holding each other when the world felt like it was falling apart. But betrayal doesn't knock on the door politely. It crashes in when you least expect it. And it changes everything. You ever look at someone you've loved for years and suddenly realize you don't know who they are anymore? That night was my moment. My turning point. The minute I stopped being naive. And the strange part is, what happened wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No slaps. Just a moment. One single moment that cracked the foundation of my entire life. And ever since, I've been living in the aftershocks. So, if you've ever loved someone who broke you, if you've ever stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m. wondering how things got this far off track, if you've ever felt the ache of betrayal so deep it's like someone reached inside your chest and squeezed, then this story is for you. Subscribe if you believe real life can be stranger and more heartbreaking than fiction. Because what happened next? Even I still don't understand. And yet, I remember every detail. I was 42. Married for 16 years. 2 kids. A well-decorated house, a predictable routine, and a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. The kind of life people glance at on social media and think they must be so happy. But the thing is, pictures lie. And routines? They can be quiet little coffins for the soul. From the outside, we were that family. The ones who brought homemade cupcakes to school events, who took Christmas card photos in matching sweaters, who waved at neighbors while watering the lawn. But behind closed doors, we were strangers learning how to share space without colliding. He hadn't kissed me properly in over a year. We still slept in the same bed, sure, but it felt like a stranger's. We'd touch, occasionally, out of obligation. A brush on the shoulder, a quick peck on the cheek when the kids were watching. But that fire? That raw, unspoken connection we used to have? Gone. Sometimes I'd watch him from across the dinner table, studying the way he held his fork, the way he avoided eye contact, and wonder, when did I stop being someone he wanted to come home to? Mark was charming. Painfully charming. The kind of man who remembered birthdays, who knew how to talk to anyone in any room. Women loved him. Men admired him. He had this natural ease, like life had never bruised him. And maybe that was the difference. I had bruises. I carried them quietly, disappointments, small heartbreaks, sacrifices I made without being asked. But Mark? He floated through our life like he was always just visiting. He was especially charming at work. Especially with her. Julia. Younger than me by at least 10 years. Tall. Blonde. Effortlessly beautiful in that, I barely tried but still look perfect kind of way. She was new at the firm. Marketing, I think. I didn't know much about her. Only what I saw. Only what I felt. There was this one time, a few months before the party, we were at a work function. Mark had dragged me there, even though he knew I hated those things. He was introducing me to colleagues when Julia walked up. She laughed loud, open, like the room revolved around her, and then she hugged Mark. A little too long. A little too close. Her hand lingered at the small of his back, like she belonged there. Something inside me twitched. But I smiled. Like a good wife does. I told myself I was being insecure. Petty. I mean, she was just being friendly, right? That's what I do. I explain things away until there's nothing left to explain. Because if I don't, then I have to face the possibility that something is really wrong. And that's terrifying. Now, there was one person I confided in back then, Lisa. My best friend since college. She's the kind of woman who always knows what's happening before it happens. The one who sees through people. But with Lisa, well, you never quite know whose side she's really on. She listens, yes. Nods. Offers advice. But sometimes I got the sense she was holding something back. Like she knew more than she let on. And then there was Claire. Our daughter. 17, going on 30. Bright, intuitive, and more observant than she should be. She didn't say much, but her eyes, those eyes were like mirrors. She could sense the tension between Mark and me, even when we tried to hide it. She once asked me, quietly, Mom, do you still love Dad? I laughed it off, of course. Told her grown-up relationships are complicated. But inside, I was wrecked. Because the truth was, I didn't know the answer anymore. Our home was beautiful. Open concept. White kitchen. Hardwood floors. Photos of smiling vacations lined the walls. Everything in its place. Except us. And that night, the night of the party, was supposed to be a celebration. Mark had just landed a huge deal at work. He was glowing with success. We were invited to a company event at this upscale venue downtown. Glass chandeliers, rooftop views, the kind of place where you feel underdressed no matter what you wear. I spent hours getting ready. Not because I was trying to impress anyone else. Just him. I wanted to be seen. I wanted him to look at me the way he used to. And when we got there, it all looked perfect. People were laughing. Champagne glasses clinking. Jazz music humming in the background. But the moment we walked in, I felt it. That low hum of something being off. He walked ahead of me. Barely glancing back. And there she was. Julia. Dressed in a fitted black dress that didn't leave much to the imagination. When she saw Mark, she lit up. Like he was the only person in the room. She walked straight up to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. Not a polite hug. Not a professional one. Something else. I stood just a few feet away. And Mark, he smiled. He leaned into her. His hand rested lightly on her waist. Like muscle memory. Like it wasn't the first time. I froze. My hands clenched around my clutch. But I didn't say a word. I smiled. Like a good wife does. And right then, I knew something was happening. Something had already happened. But instead of storming out, or confronting them, or making a scene, I stayed. I laughed at people's jokes. I sipped my drink. I played my part. Because when your whole life has been built on appearances, you learn how to wear a mask better than anyone. But deep inside, a storm had already begun. And that night, that party, was going to tear everything I thought I knew apart. It was meant to be a celebration. Mark's promotion. A big one. Vice President of Strategic Development or some impressive-sounding title that meant he'd be traveling more, working longer hours, and, let's be honest, getting more attention. This night was supposed to be a new chapter for him, for us. Or at least, that's what I told myself as I zipped up the red dress. He used to say red was my color. Said it lit up my skin and brought out the fire in me. So I wore it for him. I stood in the mirror for longer than I care to admit, hoping he'd look at me and remember. Remember what we had before everything dulled. Before silence filled the spaces between our words. But when I walked downstairs that night, he barely looked at me. A quick glance, a half smile. No words, no compliment. Just, you ready? That should have told me everything. But still, I held on. The venue was gorgeous. Chandeliers like stars, soft jazz playing from the corner, candles flickering on every table. The kind of place where everything feels a little magical. But that magic never reached me. The moment we stepped inside, he was gone. Pulled into handshakes, backslaps, toasts. People praising him, congratulating him, patting him on the back like he'd won the lottery. And then, there she was. Julia. God, I still remember the way she walked across that room. Confident. Deliberate. Like she knew exactly where she was going and who she was going there for. Her dress clung to her in all the ways mine used to. Her lips redder than mine. Her laugh louder. Her arms wrapped around Mark's shoulders before I could even catch up. He didn't pull away. He didn't even glance to see if I was watching. And me? I just stood there, clutching a glass of wine I hadn't even tasted. From across the room, Julia's eyes found mine. Not with surprise. Not even guilt. Just acknowledgement. As if to say, you see it now, don't you? I smiled. Because that's what I'd learned to do. Smile when it hurts. Smile when it's awkward. Smile when you want to scream. It's amazing how well you can lie with your face when you've had years to practice. As the night went on, I noticed more. Mark kept disappearing. Little gaps in time. First it was to check a work email. Then to talk to the head of operations. Then to grab us both a drink. But the drinks never came. And every time I scanned the room, I saw him, just out of reach. And her, always near. Their heads bent too close in conversation. Hands brushing when they passed something. The kind of casual intimacy that doesn't belong at work events. The kind of comfort that only comes when boundaries have already been crossed. I started counting the minutes. 5, 10, 20. I caught snippets of conversation from other people. Someone said he was the golden boy of the company. Someone else said Julia was his favorite. But the one that stuck, the one that burrowed into my brain and wouldn't let go, was a woman I didn't know, standing near the bar with a smirk on her lips and too much wine in her voice. She leaned toward me and said, almost casually, "You're so patient with them." I wouldn't be. Not after the rumors. Just like that. No explanation. No clarification. Just that one line. A sentence wrapped in implication. I blinked, tried to smile, and asked, "What rumors?" But she laughed. Shrugged. Silly office stuff. You know how people talk. And then she walked away. I stood there, heart racing, hands cold, brain buzzing with 100 questions I didn't want answers to. The band started playing something slow, couples drifting to the floor like it was a movie scene. And I stood there. Alone. My husband nowhere to be seen. A few minutes later, I caught a glimpse of them, Mark and Julia, slipping out the side door. Laughing. Together. And I knew. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I knew. It was like the air changed. The room got louder. Brighter. Like I'd been pushed outside of it all. People passed me, laughed near me, but I felt invisible. Like a ghost of a woman who once believed her marriage was unshakable. And all I could think was, what else have I missed? How long has this been going on? Why didn't I see it sooner? But I knew why. Because I trusted him. Because I loved him. Because I wanted so badly to believe we were just going through a phase. But deep down, the truth had been whispering to me for months. And now, it was screaming. That night didn't just crack something inside me, it split me. And I had no idea that the worst was still to come. I didn't sleep that night. We got home around midnight and Mark went straight to the bathroom. He didn't say much in the car, just the usual, "Great party," and "You looked nice tonight," said with the same energy he'd used to compliment a stranger's haircut. I mumbled something back. I don't even remember what. Because in my head, I was screaming. But I didn't say anything. I didn't ask where he'd gone when he disappeared. I didn't mention Julia. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I crawled into bed beside him, turned off the light, and stared at the ceiling while he fell asleep within minutes. Like his conscience was clear. Like nothing had happened. Like I didn't just watch my marriage crack from the inside. And that's the part that messes with your mind. What if I was wrong? What if it really was just office chatter, harmless flirting, a joke I didn't get? The next morning, I stood at the kitchen sink watching Mark pour his coffee. Same routine. Same movements. He scrolled through his phone while sipping, not once looking up at me. Not once asking how I was. Not once acknowledging the storm swirling inside my chest. I asked myself, am I really doing this? Am I really going to turn our life upside down over a few lingering touches and one snide comment from a stranger? Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just jealous. Because someone else could make him laugh. Because someone else made him light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe I was the problem. I mean, who was I now? I wasn't the spontaneous, fun version of myself he married. I was tired. Worn down. Always organizing, cooking, reminding people to take their vitamins. I had become the background of our family. The scaffolding that held everything up, but never got seen. I used to matter. Now I was a fixture. A shadow trailing behind him. And the worst part? I let it happen. I slowly dimmed myself so he could shine. I made excuses for every late night, every missed anniversary, every dinner where he barely looked up from his phone. So I called Lisa. Because sometimes, you just need someone to talk you down off the ledge. Someone to tell you you're not crazy. Or maybe, that you are. But with love. We met at the coffee shop around the corner. I didn't even order anything. Just sat down and said, something's wrong. I think Mark's. I don't know. Something's going on with him and that woman, Julia. She blinked. Her mouth twisted a little, like she'd expected this conversation. Then she leaned in, her voice soft but steady. Don't ruin the night with silly thoughts. Mark loves you. You're just imagining things. I stared at her. Was that it? Was I imagining the way he looked at her? The way she touched him like it was second nature? The way he smiled at her, like he used to smile at me? I wanted Lisa to say more. To tell me I wasn't wrong. To whisper that she'd seen something too. But she just sipped her latte and changed the subject. Started talking about her new curtains. As if my world wasn't quietly unraveling. I sat there nodding, pretending to care. But inside, I was spiraling. Guilt wrapped itself around my throat like a vine. Was I accusing him of something he didn't do? Was I being insecure? But then the shame would hit me. No, I'm not crazy. I saw it. I felt it. And even if there wasn't a full-blown affair, even if nothing had happened yet, there was something there. Some line crossed. But fear kept me silent. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being right. Because if I was right, what did that mean for our family? Our kids? Our years together? Did it all fall apart because I didn't say anything sooner? Or because I had nothing left to say? I started questioning everything. My worth, my instincts, my memory. I replayed every interaction between them, every work dinner, every office party, every time he mentioned her name in passing. I began to see it all differently now. I stood in front of the mirror that night after everyone had gone to bed, washed my face, stared at my reflection. And I didn't even recognize the woman looking back at me. I looked tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Like I'd been carrying the weight of unspoken pain for years. And maybe I had. Maybe the real betrayal wasn't what he did with Julia. Maybe it was how long I let myself live like I didn't deserve more. More love. More truth. More realness. Because what I was living in, it wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a story we were both pretending to still believe in. And I knew, If I didn't confront it soon, I was going to disappear completely. After the party, something shifted. Not just in me, but in him. Mark was different. Colder. More distracted than usual. The kind of distracted that doesn't come from stress or exhaustion, but from distance. Emotional absence. He'd always been a little wrapped up in work, but now it felt like he was in a completely different orbit. Like he was physically home, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. The late nights started again. At first, it was once or twice a week. We're closing a big project, he'd say. Can't drop the ball now. Then it became routine. He'd leave early, come home late. He'd smell like cologne that wasn't his usual. And sometimes, like he'd showered somewhere else. He stopped asking about my day. Stopped kissing me goodbye. Our conversations dwindled to logistics. Groceries, bills, Claire's school events. And his phone. God, his phone became glued to him. Even in the bathroom. Even while we were watching a movie. At night, the screen would light up at 11, 12, even 1 a.m. He'd glance at it, then turn it face down. Sometimes he'd smirk quietly to himself, like whoever was on the other end had said something clever. I knew. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew. One day, I was cleaning out the back seat of his car. Claire had left her art supplies all over the floor, and I was trying to pick up some paintbrushes wedged under the seat. That's when I saw it. A glass. Stemless. Fancy. Not the kind we had at home. And on the rim? Lipstick. A soft plum color, nothing I'd ever wear. Smudged just enough to tell me someone had taken a generous sip. I froze. Just sat there in the back seat with that glass in my hand, heart racing. Why was it there? Who had been in this car? When? Where were they going? That glass felt heavier than it looked. It wasn't just glass. It was confirmation. I didn't even say anything at first. I placed it gently in a paper bag and stuck it in the garage. I needed time to breathe. Later that night, as we sat on opposite sides of the couch pretending to watch TV, I turned to him. My voice was calm. Too calm. Hey, I found something in your car today. He didn't look away from the screen. Yeah? A glass. With lipstick on it. Now he looked at me. Just for a moment. But his face didn't crack. Not even a twitch. That must have been from that work dinner with Julia and the team. She rode with me. You know how messy she is. He chuckled. Too casually. I didn't say anything. Just watched him. Studied him. He looked back at the TV. Then added, Are you seriously accusing me of something right now? You've always had trust issues. This is nothing. That hit me like a punch. You've always had trust issues. He turned it on me. Made me the problem. Made me question my own sanity. But I'd heard those words before. Years ago. Different situation. Different lie. Back then, I had found a text on his phone. Something vague. Flirty. When I confronted him, he said the same thing. You're always overreacting. You read into everything. 3 months later, I found out the truth. He'd had a one-night stand on a business trip. Said it meant nothing. Said it was a mistake. Said he wanted to fix things. And I let him. Because Claire was little. Because I was scared. Because I thought love was supposed to forgive. But now I saw the pattern. The deflection. The way he made me feel crazy for noticing things that were right in front of me. That night, I stayed up late scrolling through his social media. Something I hadn't done in a long time. We didn't post about each other much anymore, but I was looking for anything. And that's when I saw it. A notification. Julia had liked one of his photos. Not a new one. An old one. From a beach trip we took 4 years ago, him shirtless, grinning at the camera, holding Claire's hand. It was such a random picture. Why would she go digging that far back unless she was looking? That accidental like. Wasn't an accident. It was a message. A mark. A silent, smug little stamp. I've been here too. The next few days, I watched everything closer. How often he checked his phone. How quickly he turned away from my gaze. How his moods changed depending on whether or not he'd been texting. He became shorter with me. Easily irritated. Every question I asked felt like a nuisance. Like my concern was an inconvenience. I started losing sleep. Started checking his phone when he left the room, but the man had gotten smarter. Everything was locked. Fingerprint, Face ID, privacy settings. I felt like I was living with a stranger. Like I was on the outside of my own marriage, watching someone else live inside it. And it was killing me. Every little moment chipped away at my sanity, the quiet whispers, the smirks, the late nights, the lipstick, the empty apologies, the gaslighting. It wasn't just betrayal I felt. It was erasure. Like I was slowly being erased from my own life, while someone else was taking my place. And still, I hadn't told anyone. Not even Lisa. Not Claire. No one. Because once I said it out loud, it would be real. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I was close. So close. Because you can only carry a lie for so long before it starts to break you open from the inside. It was a Saturday night. Cool air. Clear skies. Lisa had invited a small group of friends over for what she called a casual wine night. Nothing fancy, just old friends, laughter, some good music. I almost didn't go. Something in my gut told me to stay home. But I went anyway. Because I needed to see. I needed to know if what I'd been feeling in my bones was real, or just my heart playing tricks on me. When we arrived, everything looked normal. Candles flickering on the back patio, wine glasses clinking, music humming low from the speaker Lisa always kept on her kitchen counter. I tried to act normal. Smiled. Laughed when people told stories. Even wore the blue blouse Mark once said made my eyes look like oceans. But none of it felt real. It was all performance. Lisa greeted us like always, warm hug, compliments, quick chatter about the wine selection. But there was something in her eyes. A tightness. She was unusually quiet. Too quiet for someone who loved to be the center of attention. She kept glancing at Mark. And Julia. Yes, Julia was there. Of course she was. Standing by the fireplace with a glass of red, laughing at something Mark had said. She wore a black dress again, shorter this time. Tighter. Her hair pulled back, lips painted a deep burgundy. She looked like she belonged there. Like this was her space now. Mark was distant. He kept to one side of the room, swirling his drink, glancing at his phone every few minutes. He barely spoke to me. And when he did, it was polite, public, measured. I watched the way he leaned toward Julia when she spoke. The way she touched his arm casually, like it was second nature. Like I wasn't standing 10 feet away. Like I didn't exist. My heart was pounding the entire night. Like I was waiting for something to explode, even if I didn't know what. Around 10 p.m., Mark disappeared. Said something about taking a call. I nodded, pretending I didn't care. But minutes passed. Then 20. I scanned the room. Julia was gone too. I set my wine glass down and slipped away. Quiet. Controlled. Just walking. I checked the kitchen. The hallway. The patio. Nothing. Then I saw it. A hallway leading upstairs. The house was dimly lit, candles casting long shadows against the walls. I climbed the stairs slowly. Heart in my throat. Every step louder in my ears than the last. And then, I saw it. A door, partially closed. Light leaking through the crack. Whispers. Soft. Muffled. Laughter. I moved closer. Closer still. And gently, pushed the door. What I saw, I will never forget. Julia. Her dress hiked up. Mark. His shirt open. Their bodies too close. Too familiar. His hand on her waist. Her fingers tracing his jaw. Their faces inches apart. Whispering like lovers in the middle of the night. They hadn't noticed me yet. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. Cried. Collapsed. But I didn't. I froze. Just stood there, staring. Watching the betrayal unfold in front of me like some twisted slow-motion scene. Then, Mark saw me. Our eyes locked. His face didn't twist in shame. No panic. No guilt. Just recognition. Like he had expected this moment to come. Like he was tired of hiding. Silence stretched between us. Julia slowly turned her head and saw me too. She didn't even flinch. She just adjusted her dress slightly. I didn't speak. Didn't cry. Didn't demand answers. I just walked away. Down the stairs. Back into the warm glow of the living room. People were still talking, laughing. Clueless. I picked up my wine glass. Topped it off. And smiled at someone I barely knew. Made a joke about the music being too loud. Because that's what you do when your heart breaks in public, you pretend. You smile so wide it hurts. You act like nothing happened. Because in that moment, the truth is too big. Too loud. Too messy to show the world. I played my part. Polished. Composed. The perfect picture of someone fine. And I held it together. Until we got home. But here's the thing. That wasn't the moment everything broke. No. That came the next morning when I found something else. Something I wasn't prepared for. And that changed everything. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't scream. Didn't throw anything. Didn't demand answers. I just stopped feeling things. It was like a switch flipped inside me. I shut down. My body moved, but my mind detached like I was watching myself from the outside, floating just above the wreckage. We got home late. He said nothing. Neither did I. He changed into pajamas, brushed his teeth, slid into bed like it was any other night. No apology. No explanation. Not even a trace of shame. I lay there beside him, facing the wall. My body stiff, my mind screaming into a silent void. The next morning, he acted like everything was normal. He poured coffee. Asked if we needed anything from the store. Made a joke about Claire's messy backpack sitting by the door. I stared at him like he was a stranger. Because that's what he was now. Not my husband. Not even a liar. Just a stranger wearing the skin of someone I used to love. Then the phone rang. The landline. We barely even used it anymore. I picked it up, out of habit. Hello? There was a pause. Then a soft, breathy voice. Hi, is Mark there? I didn't say a word. The silence stretched. Then she hung up. I didn't need to ask who it was. I knew. Julia. Of course it was Julia. Calling our house. The house where our daughter slept 2 rooms away. The house I built a life in. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the audacity. The disrespect. The way she moved through our lives like she had a right to be there. Claire started picking up on the shift. She's too smart not to. Later that evening, she cornered me in the hallway. Her voice was small, unsure. Mom, why are you and Dad so weird lately? I froze. Tried to smile. Tried to lie. Oh, sweetie. We're just tired. Grown-up stuff. You know how that goes. But she didn't buy it. She just looked at me with those eyes, Mark's eyes. But softer. Kinder. Wiser. And in that moment, my heart cracked again. Not for me. But for her. Because no matter how much I tried to shield her, she could feel the tension. The silence. The ache in the air that you can't explain, but you know is there. I thought I could hold it together. I thought I could carry this pain alone. But it kept spilling out in little ways, in the way I snapped when she forgot her lunch. In the way I avoided Lisa's texts. In the way I cried silently in the shower, over and over, hoping the water would wash the grief out of me. And then, Lisa showed up at my door. Unannounced. Like she knew. We sat on the porch, wine in hand, silence sitting heavy between us. Finally, I asked, did you know? She didn't answer right away. Just stared at her glass like it could protect her. Then, quietly, I've known for months. My breath caught. My heart didn't even break this time, it sank. Deeper than it ever had. I didn't tell you, she continued, because you looked so happy. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. Didn't matter? To who? I wanted to scream. Throw the glass across the yard. Shake her. But I didn't. I just sat there. Letting the betrayal sink in. Because it wasn't just Mark who betrayed me. It was the people around me. The ones who claimed to love me. To protect me. And yet, they all let me live in a lie. It was like I'd been on a stage this whole time. Spotlight on. Audience watching. And I was the only one who didn't know the script had changed. The isolation was unbearable. I felt surrounded, but completely alone. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know who to trust anymore. Not my husband. Not my best friend. Not even myself. Because how did I not see this coming? After Lisa left, I sat alone on the porch long after the sun had gone down. The wine glass empty. The air still. And my thoughts louder than ever. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over, like a broken record on a loop I couldn't shut off. Was I too cold? Did I stop trying? Was I the reason he slipped away? Did I drive him to her? I thought back to the earlier years. How I used to make an effort, little notes in his briefcase. Surprise dinners. Wearing his favorite perfume just because. But over time, life got heavier. The kids needed more. My job demanded more. And he just drifted. Was it me? Did I get boring? Predictable? Too responsible? Too tired? Too focused on everyone else and not enough on us? Or was he always like this, charming and hollow, good at making people feel seen while hiding who he really was? I looked back at our life together and suddenly saw gaps I'd never noticed before. Business trips that didn't add up. Late nights that came with vague explanations. Moments that didn't feel wrong at the time, but now they pulsed with warning signs. And that's when the guilt turned into something more dangerous, doubt. Not just in him, but in me. My judgment. My instincts. My sense of reality. I thought about leaving. More than once. I'd run through the scenarios in my mind like a movie montage, me packing a bag, driving off into the night, starting over somewhere new. Maybe with Claire. Maybe alone. But then, I'd picture her face. How would I explain this to her? How do you tell your daughter that her father isn't the man you thought he was? That love isn't always enough? That sometimes you have to walk away from the very thing you built your world around? And then I'd picture the other side. Staying. Pretending. Swallowing my pride and my pain just to keep the family intact. Could I do that? Live in the same house, eat dinner at the same table, smile through birthdays and holidays, knowing what I knew? Could I look at him every day and not hate myself for accepting it? I didn't know what was worse. Staying or going. The only thing I knew for certain was nothing was ever going to be the same again. And then, just when I thought I'd reached the bottom, I saw something. Something that made the decision for me. It was the following morning. Everyone was asleep. I was gathering laundry from the bathroom when I saw it, tucked in the small trash bin beside the toilet. A pregnancy test. Still in its wrapper. But used. Positive. My heart stopped. Everything around me faded. There was no sound. No breath. Just the thudding in my chest. I stared at it, hands shaking. It wasn't mine. I hadn't even touched Mark in months. So, whose was it? Julia's? Someone else's? Was it some sick joke? A mistake? A warning? The questions multiplied faster than I could keep up. I didn't confront him. Not right away. I just stood there, staring at that tiny piece of plastic, realizing in that moment, I had no idea who this man really was anymore. And the most terrifying part? I wasn't even sure I wanted to know. All I knew was this: that test was a line I couldn't pretend didn't exist. It was the proof I'd been dreading. The final crack in a foundation already rotting from the inside. And suddenly, my story wasn't just one of betrayal. It was one of awakening. So now I want to ask you something. Yeah, you. What would you do if you were in my place? If you found a lipstick-stained glass in your husband's car? If your best friend admitted she'd known all along? If your daughter started sensing something she couldn't put into words? And then, if you found a pregnancy test in your bathroom trash, positive and not yours? Would you walk away quietly? Would you pack your things, protect your peace, and rebuild what's left of your heart somewhere new? Or would you stay? Long enough to make them feel every ounce of the confusion, betrayal, and ache they left buried inside you? Have you ever trusted someone so much, only to have that trust shattered in a single moment, not by what they confessed, but by what they never said? Because that's the thing about betrayal, it's not always loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence. In glances. In lipstick stains. In late-night texts that aren't for you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a moment in your life you've tried to forget, or maybe one you're still living through right now. Talk to me in the comments. I read every word. Let's talk about it. Let's feel it together. Because you're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, the ones we're afraid to say out loud but need to hear, go ahead and subscribe. This is just the beginning. You know, people always think infidelity starts in the bedroom. But it doesn't. It starts in the small spaces between two people in silence. In things left unsaid. In those tiny choices we make to not look, not ask, not feel. Infidelity doesn't always begin with a touch. Sometimes, it starts the moment one person begins to leave the room emotionally, long before they ever physically walk out the door. And what haunts me most? It's not the lies he told. It's the truths he never said. The distance. The quiet resentments. The ways he stopped seeing me, piece by piece, until I became invisible. It's the absence that hurts. The way he disappeared, while sitting right beside me. I've thought about confronting him. God, have I thought about it. I've played the scene in my head 100 different ways, the words I'd say, the expression on his face, the tears, the rage, the collapse of everything we built. But I haven't told him I know. Not yet. And maybe I never will. Or maybe one day, when he least expects it. When he thinks everything is back to normal, when he starts to believe I've forgotten. I'll let him see what it feels like to be left stunned. To be standing in a room he thought was safe, only to find out it was burning all along. Because some betrayals don't deserve confrontation. They deserve distance. They deserve silence. A silence so loud, it echoes. So if you're listening to this and you've been there, you've stood where I stood, questioned what you knew, felt yourself unravel, I see you. And I promise, you are stronger than you think. What happened next? That's a story for another time. One I'm almost ready to tell. So if you haven't already, subscribe. Stay with me. Because these are the stories people are too afraid to say out loud. And here we say them anyway.